Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Vibe Show. I'm your host, Vinky Lumba, and today I have a very special guest, my good friend, Ruben Greth, with us. Ruben has a popular podcast about raising money for multifamily syndication called the Capital Raiser Show, where he learns from the best multifamily syndications in the country. So I'm super excited to have him with me today. He told me earlier that at the beginning of 2018, when he started, he was not even familiar with the word syndication. And today he's raising millions of dollars. Welcome, Ruben.
How fun to be on the RE Vibe Show with my friend Vinky. This is going to be exciting. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yes. So I'm going to start with my favorite question, Ruben.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you this. How do you see yourself today at present, personally as well as professionally?
So personally, I'm very excited because I just celebrated my 3rd year anniversary with my wife. So it's my first marriage. I'm kind of older. I'm like 47. My wife is 28 years old. So it's really an exciting time. We're hoping to have children soon. And on the professional side, I find myself as a scaling capital raiser, which is also very exciting because not only am I working on creating generational wealth for my bloodline, but I'm also helping a lot of investors do the exact same thing for themselves and their families. So this is a great place, great spot, a very cool little niche, a sub niche of multifamily that I love spending time with. And of course, as podcast host, we get to meet the coolest people in the world, right? So
yeah,
I'm having a lot of fun.
That's so true. Having a lot of fun. That's the name of the game, right? Having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And seriously, when you're having fun with your work, it's not a work. And then you kind of work happily and then you achieve more. So let me ask you this question. How did you start in this profession in real estate? Or what kind of background do you have?
Yeah, I started in mortgages and then found a real estate group because I wasn't learning anything about investing, being a mortgage guy. This group kind of taught me a bunch of strategies about single family, and they had one specific class on multifamily. I got excited about the industry, the large scale multifamily side, and how you can scale a lot faster than single family. I started a meetup, met a guy that was buying a lot of fourplexes, started going around town, filming him at his fourplexes, created a YouTube channel. And from the videos that I was posting, we ended up raising $625,000 for small deals in the joint venture fashion back during the real estate crash. I ended up splitting ways with him and lost my way in real estate, went back to corporate America, left the country, came back, found out about this thing called syndication, joined a local syndicator. We started raising money. I should say I participated on the raising money side for them. We raised about $1 million for heavy lift properties in the multifamily space down in Tucson. Started my show and then met a bunch of sponsors and syndicators, was interested on how to make money putting them together. And a bunch of lawyers told me you have to start a fund. So eventually I went off to go launch my own fund when I met my friend and partner, Andy McMullen, who said, hey, instead of launching your own fund, come partner with me. I already have done a bunch of funds. I have a 20-year record of raising $20 million for different syndications and single families. And now what we do is we've partnered together. We have a business model to build subdivisions out in Louisiana in the Southeast. And then the other thing that we do is we raise money within funds or sometimes as co-GPs with other sponsors in their deals. So we're participating in 2 kinds of capital raises, some of them for our own deals and some of them for other value multifamily sponsors. So it's really kind of fun how you go full circle from being in the business, leaving the business, and then coming back and then finding out about a new and improved method for raising money. And then you take it as far as you can and learn along the way. This is where I find myself today. So we're having a good time helping people in the space. And what we're discovering is that the ability to raise for your own deals is a lot more lucrative for ourselves and for our investors than when we go and raise for other people. But at the same time, a lot of people in the capital raising space are focused on multifamily value add, which are becoming harder and harder to acquire. So I see a lot of people as a trend kind of moving into these different sub niches of multifamily. They're going into assisted living, senior living, student housing, heavy lift value add, heavy lift real estate, or in some cases, construction and development.
Right.
And even along further lines are going into RV park syndications, mobile home parks, and self-storage. So the harder it is to find these value add deals, the more people are going to get into these other avenues within commercial real estate assets so that they can sub niche down and become experts in fields and help people create money when it was becoming harder in the value add space.
That's true. There's so many asset classes within real estate, and it depends upon what resonates with you, what your niche market is. So let me ask you this question. You said you started the capital raising with the video shoots that you did with your friend.
Yeah.
So at that time, you guys were looking for money, or how did that come about?
So in the back of my mind, I was looking for money, but I had studied with a couple of, coming from a mortgage background, I knew that you could never promise as a banker, hey, we guarantee you a 4.5% mortgage rate. It violates truth in lending laws. And you can't say those types of things without analyzing someone's credit. So when I understood that in the capital raising game, when you're talking about things that you can invest, you can have people invest with you, you never want to promise anything or guarantee anything, because similar to lending, you could potentially violate Securities Exchange Commission laws. So what we would do, and this was the trick that really helped us, is instead of telling people, hey, come partner with us, we'll make you money, we would say, hey, this is what we're doing. What we would do is we would go and find these fourplexes that were cash flowing astronomically because they were being bought very inexpensively during the crash at $20,000 for brick built fourplexes. And just by sharing this model with people, we got people excited. They would come talk to us. We would court them. We would take them to lunch. We would take them to our properties. And then over time, these guys became our partners and brought the money to buy these deals. And in a very similar fashion, when I came back into the world of syndication, I learned that, through the show, by educating and nurturing and sharing your message and sharing what you're doing without promising anything, it's a good way to get people to start reaching out to you. And that is one of the keys to raising capital, is just sharing a message and being consistent with your nurturing and education and what you're doing.
That's true, because when it comes to money, everybody gets like a little bit hesitant, who they wanted to go with. And then if you come with a salesy pitch,
no,
people just run away. But
absolutely.
Instead, you're sharing the information. Okay, kind of good faith. I'm sharing this information. I'm doing this. You're gaining some traction that way, which is awesome. So let's talk about your first real raise. This one you were just doing kind of, I would say, with intention to raise capital, but not necessarily for a syndication. So let's talk about your first syndication raise. How did that go? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that one was tough. I had joined forces with a small team here in Arizona, and they had transitioned from single family wholesaling business to the syndication business. And a lot of their people that they were raising money from, and a lot of it came from hard money and bridge kind of products and or one-off investors, they would invest in their syndications here in Phoenix. It was a very explosive time during, I think 2016, 2014, 2018, everybody was making money, but eventually they ran out of capital. So when I found them, they were like, hey, you have experience raising money on social media. Come join us. We could use some help raising capital. And they're like, hey, we brought you on to raise capital. Where's the money? We need money. We got a deal under contract. Where's it at? And like what I discovered was that this is a very high pressure kind of situation where I could not raise money from people that I had not spoken to. And this whole process of capital raising requires you to educate and nurture people. So my solution was I'm going to go and raise money from other capital raisers, or specifically from co-GPs. So I went out and seeked co-GPs because I figured my process for bringing in the money would be a lot faster. We could get it done while under contract instead of taking this long process out and educating and nurturing limited partners over 6 months to a year or maybe longer. So I brought a couple of co-GPs. They brought their networkers, their network, and they were looking to get their general partnership status, their co-GP card or GP card. They brought their investors into our deal, which made financial sense for them. And then I found another co-GP, and then within a couple of, so that very first syndication, I brought like 500,000 from a co-GP. And then we did another syndication, and then we raised another around 625,000 for that second one. But that money all came, it never came from limited partners. It came from co-GPs. And that was my form of raising capital.
So first time, that's a very good point you said. So you kind of paired up with the other co-GPs or the aspiring GPs, or who wanted to be aspiring co-GPs, I would say.
Yeah, some people
So
that
they
are
wanted to be part of the
now.
deal. So was that easy, or how did that work? What kind of structure did you create with them?
Yeah, so this is something that I had to learn on the fly, right? So how do you bring a co-GP into your business? I knew that it could be done because I had seen other people do it. And even within that company that I was with, they had a sliding scale matrix. One of the keys to understanding capital raises is that when you bring somebody to bring money for you in your deal, they have to have some type of ongoing duty. They can't just bring money and disappear without having a broker dealer's license. So the way that co-GPs are structured is people not only bring money, they also have to bring skill sets and ongoing duties. And you make them an officer of your company. You basically make them an owner of your company, and then they do what they need to do, whether that's, so we had this sliding scale matrix where people would say, this is my skill set. I know how to find construction materials. I know how to deal with property managers. I know how to do investor relations. I know how to implement the technology. I know automations. I know marketing. I know, et cetera, right? Whether it's construction management or helping out with the earnest money deposit, or helping out with the acquiring, or helping out with the underwriting. There's all these things that they can do. So we would give them this list of all these different things that they could do to participate with us. They would fill it out. And then once we have that, we would turn that over to our lawyer. We'd come up with an agreement. We'd tell them this is what percentage of ownership of the company you can have. And typically within a syndication, it's a 30% split for the syndication group, and then the rest goes to all the limited partners. So within that 30%, you select the pieces within the matrix that people can participate in, and then you pay them accordingly. So if they can do just raise the capital and investor relations, that's one thing. If they can help with earnest money deposit, that's an additional thing. If they can help find the property, that's an additional thing. If they can help with property manage or construction management, that's an additional thing. So the sliding scale changes based off of what their skill set is, and you pay them based off of the entire scope of their project. So it wasn't too crazy, but for me, it was very complicated because I didn't know any of these things. But fortunately, I had a team that had these kind of systems in place and a good syndication attorney. They would work with us, help the co-GP incorporate themselves into our company. And then once they was all said and done, the co-GP would go and raise the capital and then participate in ongoing duties. That's how it ended up working. So that's what I think. A lot of people don't realize that you can do your first capital this way, your first capital raise this way. They think that you have to go and bring some LPs. And even then, typically their first capital raise is a co-GP structure, or they're just referring people to somebody and then getting momentum that way, which could lead them to becoming a co-GP in the future, or their own syndicator or general partner. So it sounds like a lot, but it's not as complicated as it sounds if you have a team in place that's already done it a few times.
So these were your deals in the beginning that you were raising capital for? Like you were the lead sponsor, or you were co-GPing with somebody else and then bringing in other co-GPs with you.
Yeah, my company was a general partner. So there was about 6 or 7 team members, one main general partner with a bunch of employees underneath that had the ability to become part owners of the GP in the specific deal, not specifically to the company, but to the each deal. Hey, Ruben, you're going to bring in a couple capital raisers. We're going to pay you for marketing. We're going to give you a salary, and you have the right to earn general partner shares of the business depending on what you do. And once again, it's based off the entire scope of what you do. So I started the show. I created notoriety. I helped with automations. I did investor relations. I communicated to people. I helped build the LP database. I helped rebrand the website, or at least that's what we were working on doing. So I had all of these duties that I was doing. But yes, as a general partner, what does that mean? You know, that means that you are on the title of the property as a team, or individually in conjunction with the team, or with the group of syndicators that are on the title of the property.
So when you say you are in the general partnership teams, were you able to sign on the loan as well, or part of the loan?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic, because when you are doing a cash flowing from day one agency debt product, you need to have some sort of key principal or guarantor, somebody with liquidity and these other requirements that lenders need in order for you to take down a loan on an existing syndication. So what we specialized in was heavy lift properties. And if you know anything about multifamily, large scale multifamily lending, an agency debt provider will never lend on anything that's less than 90% occupied. So we specialized on stuff that was less than 90% occupied, what we refer to as heavy lift, unstabilized property. And who lends for that? It's typically what we refer to as a bridge lender or temporary financing person. And these type of guys are asset based. They don't require you to sign on a loan. They basically look at your deal and say, hey, you know, this is 70% occupied or 80% occupied. We'll give you, we believe in your vision. We believe in your track record. We'll give you a non-recourse loan. Nobody has to sign on it. And then you guys can potentially, you know, you raise your own money for the equity, which is going to cover the remodeling of the property and the stabilization. And, you know, you do other things like removing bad property managers and putting new property management in place. But you qualify for these loans because they're not agency debt loans. They're debt loans. They come from debt funds or temporary bridge financing lenders. And then, so what happens after you stabilize the property? At that point, our company business model was to sell the property off to the next syndicator with meat on the bone still, instead of refinancing, because refinancing with agency debt would require us to have liquidity, which we did not have as a team. So we could have brought in some KPs. We looked at doing that, but typically our business model was like, let's stabilize it and sell it off to the next investor, and let's repeat. Let's rinse and repeat this process. So yes, I was one of the GPs, but no, Julianne Peterson, I was not a signer on a loan because we didn't have to sign on the loan because we weren't getting agency debt. We were getting bridge debt, which did not require us to be guarantors.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's some complicated topics there.
Yeah, it is. So let me ask you this question. You mentioned earlier the social media platform, and then you created the social media platform to help you with your capital raising capacity. So I wanted to understand from you what tools or tricks or the techniques work for you on the social media.
Okay, so social media platforms are different than interview-based platforms. Interview-based platforms are like either your blog or YouTube channel or a podcast. Social media is a different animal where you also need to educate and nurture people, but it's typically through engagement and interesting posts. So that's a different kind of animal than podcasting, which is also something that you use to attract people to you and establish a brand. But both of those tools require, in order for you to get people to know, like, and trust you, they require consistency, both on the social media side and on the podcast side. But those are the main tools for notoriety. Now, if you're talking about technology and automations, those are things that I've learned from my mentor, Annie Dickerson. So she talks about like very deep level marketing, right? So like, how do you create an avatar? What kind of a brand does your avatar like? When you create your website, is it just a bunch of buildings, or are there pictures of time freedom? What does your avatar really get interested in? Is it, the ability to escape a W-2? Are they tech employees that have the golden handcuffs? Are you saying things to them to emotionally trigger them to want to make changes in their life? Or are you just overwhelming them with data, market analysis, and return structures and waterfalls and these things that a lot of syndicators kind of want to express on their websites? Like, hey, we have our stuff together. Look at all of the stuff that we've done for market analysis and how we picked this location and why this deal is going to make sense. But they never really tap into the emotional needs of the investor. And what I found is that most investors do not invest in buildings because they love buildings. They invest in syndications because there's some emotional need that they're fulfilling, right? Whether it's either getting out of the W-2 or their business that has big tax problems, or they need to put their kids through school and college. So these are some of the types of things that they taught me. It's branding, website development, and then some of the more important stuff is automations, communications. Are you sending individual emails to people, or do you have a CRM that you can press a button and then people automatically get notified when you have a deal and they automatically receive your monthly newsletter? And then, beyond that, some of the other tools that people use are like these portals like Syndication Pro and InvestNext. And there's a bunch of them where people, if they've invested 50,000 or more with you, they need to be updated and communicated with in order to feel comfortable, because they're part of their nest egg is with you. And if they can go in the middle of the night, log into your Syndication Pro portal and see what has been recently happening with the deal, instead of requiring to get on a phone call with you, they like that. They like to be in their pajamas in the middle of the night, log in, see what has recently happened, what has been remodeled, how many units have been fixed, what's the tenant occupancy, is it going up, is it going down? They love that, right? So they can see what's going on with their money at any given time, 24 hours a day. So that's a tool that helps with informing the investor of where you're at with the project, but it's also a tool that lets people soft commit and then actually submit their funds to your project, which if you're like sending out emails or PPMs, private placement memorandums and offering memorandums and other documentations to them individually, one by one, it starts to get overwhelming. So to have all of these documents, hey, just log into the portal. You can see our new deals that have come up. You can find the PPM. You can find the webinar. You can find the link. You can find details. You can find comps. You can find underwriting. It's all in one place. They don't need to be emailed over and over with every single little piece of information. And then they can interview, or they can analyze it. And then when they have questions, then come to you and say, hey, on this underwriting thing, how come you're assuming that in year 3, you're going to get this rate for your refinance or something like that, or whatever question they have. They can educate themselves and then come to you with questions instead of just like overwhelming you with a ton of questions on every deal. So these are the most important tools that people need, right? Is so automations, consistency in posting, a platform to get their name out, and then technology that allows them to collect and produce information about the property, including the PPM and the ability to receive funds. And then after that, then we can start talking about communications for updates and things like that. But these are the main pieces that I think the competitive syndicator needs to have in place if they want to earn your business.
Yeah, I think you said it very well because we live in the information technology age and we need to leverage all that information, that technology out there because we have the knowledge all around us. We have the information, we have the data. So we need the wisdom. Wisdom is the business intelligence, like what kind of processes are the procedures we can use to take all this information and transform into a meaningful information, like you mentioned, avatar, to create your avatar, to figure out who can you connect with and at what time, at what place, all these things are important to know and understand. So well, when somebody's doing all these things, using the social media portals, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, Twitter, whatever, they have fan following. So what is the step that you're doing to turn those leads, those connections into like real leads, like adding them into your list? So you're communicating with them even further, sending them the newsletter, sending them the information about the investing, all
Mhm.
those kind of things. When that happens and how that happens, if you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, so we've built out between my partner and I a significant database. I think it's like around 6,000 people. And these guys were not receiving a lot of communication from us unless they were invested into a deal. Because then they would get, if we were invested with the sponsor would communicate with us, and then we'd essentially send that same information out to our investors. But what about the rest of the people that were not invested in our deals? When I came on to Legacy Acquisitions, which is my company with Andy McMullen, we changed the brand a little bit. We went from legacyax.com to legacyacquisitions.com. So we bought that website. We rebranded the website name, the name and the scheme of the website. And then we started implementing a newsletter, right? So like if you've never done a newsletter, how do you create that? We've had some help with some people and some of our mentors creating that. And now what we're doing is we're creating a webinar educational series that it's actually in two branches, one that's geared towards passive investors and one that's geared towards active investors. And interestingly enough, our business is doing the same thing. We're gearing ourselves to acquire more passive investors and increase our database that way, specific to those people that can invest what we refer to as retail investors that can invest 50 to 100,000 or maybe a little bit more. And then we're also focused on attracting capital raisers that we can make part owners of our funds that can bring their database. So they don't become co-GPs of the syndicated deals that we raise for typically, but they become co-GPs of our funds. So they become part owners of our funds. We help them, so one of the things that's really tricky if you're starting your own fund is like, I have to go out and pay for syndication docs. I have to develop a website. I have to create automations. I have to go pay for Syndication Pro. I have to have this big army of things. And like, if you're a first-time aspiring fund manager, that's overwhelming. So just like a co-GP that's looking to level up by partnering with another syndicator, we say aspiring fund managers, come hang out with us, become part owner of our funds, do a couple capital raises within our funds that we invest in other people's deals or our own build to rent. And then as you learn, you can start developing, you can pull back the curtain, you can see how we do it. You can see when automations are run. You can discuss marketing, including webinar educational series. And then you can start taking some of these tools, putting them into your pocket, into your understanding. And then when you outgrow, you can go and invest in your own deals or become partners with somebody else and already have that fund experience, that track record that you've already raised. Because a lot of people, they're first-time capital raisers, for somebody to get a good enough rate or work with a syndicator, they need to bring at least $1 million to co-GP or to get better terms than a limited partner or retail investor. So if they can't do $1 million or if they don't have the confidence, why not team with an existing fund manager, bring your 300 or 500, and then we also participate in the capital raise. We bring 300 or 500. Maybe we get another capital raiser who also becomes part owner of our fund. And the three of us together bring, 1.5 million. And then we bring it into Vinky Lumba's deal. And she says, okay, so I can give you better terms than my $50,000 investor because you're bringing a $1.5 million check. That's good for you. It's good for the capital raisers on the team. It gets everybody an established track record. And these are the kind of things that we're doing. On the how do we attract more limited partners? It's the same stuff that we've been talking about. It's education and nurturing and social media posts and figuring out ways to become more omnipresent, being consistent, and then educating people on the things that you are very interested in. In our case, build to rent and value add multifamily, right?
That's very good. Yeah, I think that's the name of the game, omnipresent. As long as people see you everywhere, you're good. So we are out of time. I would love to keep
That was
on
crazy.
talking to you. But let me ask you this question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What is the long-term goal now?
So we really want to double down on build to rent. We find it's the most lucrative thing that we know how to do. And it's the most lucrative things for our investors. We typically go with 506Cs. So we can talk about the kind of returns that, not that we're guaranteeing, but the stuff that we've been doing for our previous investors. And it's typically we're doubling people's money within a few years, right? So it's we're underwriting them so that you can double your money in 5 years, and they're not guaranteed, but this is our projection and our track record indicates that this is what we can do. When you compare that to value add multifamily, it's typically like 5 years or longer to double people's money. Unless you're in a crazy hot market like Phoenix or Dallas, then maybe you can do a little bit better than that. But across the entire spectrum, I see people being able to help and double people's money within about 5 years. And for me, in that 5 years, hopefully I will have knocked out, a bunch of different build to rent projects. We're working on 3 of them right now. So hopefully within 5 years, maybe that number can scale to 10 or 15. And, that's really what I want to spend my time doing, is helping people create generational wealth through that specific asset niche of multifamily, which we call build to rent.
That's good. So share one golden nugget with my audience.
So if you want to raise capital, make friends with people instead of selling them. Right. So we sometimes have all this pressure. Hey, we need to raise capital for the deal. And we get silly about it. What I recommend is, if you really want to raise capital, instead of selling some product, just become friends with people. That is absolutely my favorite piece of advice that I've learned from the show.
That's good. Become friends. I like that. So this brings us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence only. Are you ready?
Okay.
Who was the most influential person in your life?
My father.
What is the best book you ever read or recommend?
The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer.
What is your biggest passion?
Snowboarding.
In 1 word, what does life mean to you?
Legacy.
What is your favorite food?
Tacos.
Wow, that's a good one. So how can people reach out to you?
So they can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel, but find me at legacyacquisitions.com or visit my show at capitalraisershow.com.
Thanks, Ruben. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
It's been a blast. I can't believe how crazy in depth we got about some of these topics. That was fun.